These are the weirdest bases you can build in Minecraft, starting with a gas station. Well, if you ever wanted to own a gas station in Minecraft, this build is perfect for you. And here we have one of the most realistic 7-Eleven gas stations that I've ever seen. And inside of this one, you're gonna find everything that you'd expect, like a proper gas pump for fueling up your ride, and a car wash to even keep the vehicle clean. That is if you're able to get your vehicle to move. It's not exactly easy in the game without moving vehicles. And as soon as you'll enter, you'll notice that they didn't skimp out on the details inside as well, making one of the most accurate gas stations ever built in Minecraft. Building a house underwater is already weird enough, but building one that looks like a clownfish, that's taking it up a level. Now from the outside, you'll notice that it looks exactly like Nemo, so I guess we found it. Case closed. But once you step inside, you'll be blown away by its beauty here too. And by making this all of the quartz as the base block, it works really nice with the underwater tones. And at that point, any extra color that you add to this just pops so much more. And so as long as you have a water breathing potion so you don't drown down here, there's plenty of ways to enjoy this house. What's going on with this house? Now, as you can see as it's built here, this looks like a mix between a mushroom and the towers from the End City, but all done up in a red color theme. And the good news is that it's also easy to build, making it a great option if you want something different without spending weeks on it. Though most of the structure from inside and out is going to be built from the crimson wood that we find inside of the Nether, which isn't always the safest to get. But when you see a result like this, it could definitely be worth the effort. Either this build's really big or you're really small, because what we have here is kind of an illusion where we built the blocks all to giant scale. And once you step inside in this one, going back to a regular sized world just feels strange. Like when you've seen the details this close up, it almost feels like you know a secret you weren't supposed to about the blocks. But if you want to explore this with friends and maybe even play hide and seek, I think this is a great spot for it. You can even create secret bases inside of the blocks, adding an extra layer of challenge when everything around you is so massive. What if instead of having a turtle in your base, you made your whole base into a turtle? And that's how we got this, which is one of the best animal themed bases I've ever seen. Yeah, the attention to detail and size of this whole thing is truly impressive. And the idea of having a giant turtle carrying a whole island on its back comes back to an old myth stating that that's actually how our whole world is balancing on the back of a turtle, which does make you feel a little small and maybe a case of megalophobia. But with how many details they put into this on the smaller scale as well, it's a build that's easy to appreciate whether you're zoomed out or zoomed in. Forget about the end ship, because this ship is actually going to be able to fly. Now what we see in this build actually draws heavy inspiration from the incredible work of Ian McHugh, who's an art director, concept artist, and illustrator known for their work on companies like Rockstar. And then by adding in a few of the flotator blocks that you can find inside of the Minecraft potato snapshots for April Fools, we can actually make this very build fly too. Which when you put this next to a flying machine, I'd much rather have this option, even if it does mean playing only this one snapshot. Amethyst isn't an easy block to get, and making an entire house out of amethyst is definitely not going to be easy to do either. And so this creator's idea of having their house built inside of a geode is definitely weird, but in the best way possible. And inside of this house we've got multiple different sections, but all of them are going to be crafted from amethyst, making it look more purple than purple blocks, which I just think is very funny. And while the sound of walking around on all of that amethyst might be enough to drive anyone crazy, at least from a visual standpoint, I like how this one looks. When you're a kid in Minecraft, the first house you build is this. But what we have here is not just a house that's built out of every ore block, but instead it actually takes a thoughtful design to everything that we would have done when we were kids. And while it looks great in creative mode, it's not what I'm excited about building in survival. But hey, Bacon Waffles has gone and made the most expensive island in Minecraft. This seems like it would go right on there, if you can afford it. This is my house, and this is shockingly still my house, because what we've done here is split up base completely down the middle into a 50-50 design. And by having two contrasting colors, we can make this really feel unique, especially if you're splitting it up between overworld and nether materials. And to me, this looks like a perfect thing if you've got a black cat girlfriend and a golden retriever boyfriend to live at. Maybe more fit for a sitcom than Minecraft. This house looks like a puzzle, but it's actually more of a puzzle to build it, since what we see here is a base that's built inside of a massive Rubik's Cube. And while it looks great from the outside, the real fun begins when you go inside of it. See, the cube isn't just for show, it's fully livable with multiple rooms perfect for you and your friends to explore. And each room that you find inside is themed according to the color of the cube section that belongs to. So everyone can pick the favorite color and then call it home. With the new tick command, you can now create slabs from any block. And with these unique slabs, you can design smooth open areas like the one that we showcase here, helping to give your world a more realistic and seamless feel. Now, the way that we do this is slowing down the tick rate and then using pistons to slowly move the blocks into place. Since pistons retract on 2 ticks, just slowing it down to 1 tick lets us get this mid-stage pull where now we've got slabs made of everything. And while building a large area like this might be a challenge, making just a lawn to surround your base could instantly enhance its looks. This is a woodland mansion, and this is a haunted mansion. And the scariest part about it, this was built in only 5 days. And on a build of this scale, it can be easy to get lost in the sheer size of of it, but I love all the little details that Ash's den tucked in here, like using the candles on top of fence posts on top of leathers for these huge torches, because just having a standard torch on a wall would be something that we're not going to expect to see. Come on, they wouldn't look nearly as impressive in this hallway. And as a place to sleep, there's plenty of room for you and the monster who lives under your bed. This dark oak house is genius. See, the clever use of different blocks and unique placement gives it a funky and eye-catching look. And while it might seem tricky to build, the final result is totally worth it for the style. And while I'm usually not a fan of having this many stairs and slabs inside of a build, the way that they put it together here, it actually all feels necessary. And by putting that same level of detail and effort inside, it really makes the whole thing feel a lot more cohesive. Forget about a furnace, this lava-powered forge is exactly what you've been waiting for. And while you might think that this is made with the Create mod, the truth is that this is all possible inside of vanilla. And by having machines and heat pipes that are crafted from copper, we can give the build a really industrial look. And what's better yet is that this actually is functional too, giving our own factory to smelt ores and produce our ingots, which is a lot more impressive than just throwing in your raw iron with a couple of coal into a furnace yet again. This humpback whale build is 464 blocks long, and it's not just the scale that's the impressive part, because if you take one look at it, you'll increasingly find that there was a lot of time and dedication needed to make this as smooth and accurate as they did. But while this is made mainly from wool, I would be worried about it being a fire hazard if you weren't too close. But with all the space inside of the whale, we could also have plenty of room to make like Pinocchio and go hang out on the inside. And even just living on the fin would be plenty enough for me. Forget about a villager trading hall, this looks like an entire town hall build. And while making this huge structure alone would take plenty amount of time, then going around and surrounding it with a huge wheat field makes it even more impressive and even more functional. And as soon as you step inside, you'll discover a variety of different workstations with all of our villagers working inside. And thankfully, both on the inside and outside, the space is evenly well lit, which should help to keep the hostile mobs at bay, but if any do appear, the iron golems are also there. You wouldn't want your town hall turning into a ghost town. And speaking of a ghost town, ever wonder where the Wither lives? Well, this build shows you exactly that. And by using different soul-themed blocks like soul sand and soul soil, we can perfectly match the dark eerie vibe that goes along with the Wither. And then when you enter, you'll find the Wither even trapped inside of its enclosure. So I guess technically it's not a house for the Wither, but more like a tomb or a jail. But hey, it's not exactly the nicest renter, so I'm fine putting it under house arrest. I'm not sure why you'd ever want to live in one of these, because they look pretty weird. But if you do, then having a statue as your house could be a great way to know which one's yours. But then when you look further at the kind of builds that they've had in this post, you realize that looking at the same place at night, it's not exactly comforting when your neighbor has a house with a bunch of heads around it. But while some of these might be a little bit more creepy, taking a look at this muscular one, that's just a bit more funny. This has to be one of the most unsettling bases I've ever come across. Now at first it might seem luxurious, we got walls made from diamond, gold, and emerald blocks, but what makes this truly disturbing are the heads. Yeah, here we've got it covered in the heads of every mob, most of which, if not all, are hostile. Honestly, that doesn't make it any less creepy. I mean, I know people decorate sometimes with antlers on their base, and we've shown off a build hack like that in the past, but having a whole bunch of mob heads like this just feels like I'm always being watched, and not by people who are my biggest fan. Did you know that in 2014 there was a real-life Krusty Krab that opened up? Yeah, but unfortunately it closed in 2019, so there's not many pictures of it, and you'll never be able to experience it yourselves. So if you've ever dreamed of having your own restaurant like Mr. Krabs, this build is exactly what you need. And inside of this, they've recreated all the essential spots: the kitchen, Mr. Krabs' office, and even the same bathroom from the show. And while it's not exactly underwater, I will say this is nice for us who don't happen to be able to breathe with our gills. But I will tell you, no matter how long I've searched through this, I've never been able to find the Krabby Patty secret formula. Just by looking at this base, you could easily tell that it's some kind of historical monument. And unlike the pyramids that you'd find in Egypt, this is actually based off the Aztec pyramids. And then going inside, we're gonna find an underground area as well, full of mobs, traps, weird mazes, everything you could think of. And while that's all a little bit scary, you could also focus on the nicer parts, like having mushroom blocks on top of bamboo and sugarcane. That makes for an interesting plan. It at least makes for better company than the traps before. Is Minecraft's world a cube? Well, this one is. And what we've got here is a mini cube-shaped planet packed with multiple different biomes and an interior that has the nether. Think of it like a next level version of Skyblock, but you don't have to worry about accidentally messing up the cobblestone generator. And then downloading a gravity mod that lets you walk around this, you'd feel like you're playing Mario Galaxy, especially because we typically use the Mario Galaxy songs in these videos. Guilty as charged. It's inevitable, folks. When you play in a multiplayer server or you happen to be next door to a creeper, your base is gonna get griefed at some point. I know, that sucks. So to defend against that harsh reality, let's be a bit more proactive and deck out your walls. You see, cobblestone generators aren't just useful for Skyblock. We can also use them to reinforce your base. By having cobblestone generators and pistons that are underneath your build, then as a block gets broken, it's only a matter of time before the piston pushes one up and it gets replaced. So whether it's a nuisance's pickaxe or a creeper's explosion, this is at least some way to keep your walls intact. I never understand the people who log onto a multiplayer server and then decide to just play it as single player, completely isolating themselves from the rest of the bunch. And if your friend tends to do the same thing, then why not do them a favor and actually segment them by putting a giant glass dome around their base? I mean, hey, they wanted a quarantine. It's hard to do it better than a giant glass dome. And if you do this around the holidays, then it functions as both a barrier and a snow globe. I think at some point, many of us have dreamed of living on a pirate ship. But while that sounds cool, most of us don't really like the option of staying at the bottom of a shipwreck. Look, there's obvious problems here, like drowning, but you really can't argue with the kind of waterfront property we got going on. Plenty of people already use conduits to live in Ocean Atlantis style bases, so why not try to save this salvage ship? Unlike a real pirate ship, you don't have to worry about any accidental explosions down here. And better yet, when you take the time to actually flip one of these different Titanics, I think that actually makes you the captain. By opening up this trapdoor underneath my bed, that'll give us access to the secret minecart underneath. And then by having that minecart placed on top of an activator rail, we have a quick and easy way to get in and out of our secret base. And this works particularly well, especially because if you have a bed up top, it already looks like you have a base, and I doubt very many people are going to be checking underneath your beds for any kind of monsters. And then when you're ready to leave, use the same minecart and it'll shoot us right up top. While having your base in a rare location's tough enough, having it on the move is even tougher. You see, these bases, unlike humans, don't adapt too well to the nomadic lifestyle. But if you're willing to set up a mumbo jumbo style flying machine, then you can sure have a house on the move ready to go. But definitely the coolest part about it is that it is actually functional. That is pretty fun to see, and it definitely makes moving a lot easier of a concept. But just make sure that when it's time to stop, you actually have plenty of obsidian ready to do it. Otherwise, you'll just have to cut your losses and move on, because Lord knows your house will. It's tough to make Minecraft feel scary. I mean, this is what the world looks like. What would you expect? But to add that vicious flair to your nether base, these nether warp blocks can really sell the image. Taken after this user, we use the blocks for something of a blood canal to fill out our altar room. And if anything, it lets us finally have a use for nether warp blocks, since we can't uncraft them in a nether wart. And when they're this easy to come by in a crimson forest, I think that's a win-win. In order to get to our secret base, you might want to turn on chunk borders, because when you're flying over the end void, it can be tough to tell which way you're flying, whether that's up or down, and you definitely don't want it to be down. But once we follow this lodestone compass, that'll take us right to our secret base, out in basically the middle of nowhere, because very rarely do people check between the main island and the outer islands of the end. Really, if you don't get there with a gateway or a portal, most people don't explore that part of the end, which means that if you have the time to set it up, this could be the perfect location for your hideout. Just make sure that you fully stock that hideout with plenty of rockets to get back with your elytra. Otherwise, you might be stuck in secrecy for quite a while, unless you want to take the short way out. If we flip open this trapdoor to crawl inside, because of the invisible item frames that we used, we can place specific items to look as if they're placed within the world. And while it might fall apart if you take a closer look, things like the bed and the bookshelf on the wall do look quite nice, giving you a very cute build and a very mild case of claustrophobia. You might not see the secret entrance, but that's kind of the point. Since if you were to go find yourself a spot inside of a snowy area, dig down into a pit, and then place scaffolding back up to the surface, then even when we cover our tracks with a snow layer on top, we'll still be able to memorize where we go and sneak right into the location. But that's the key part, you gotta remember where you're hiding, because otherwise it might look a little weird if you just keep crouching in a pile of random snow. And the last thing you want is to draw any suspicious eyeballs to your new base. It's best to log the coordinates if you really need to. You never want your house to feel too cramped, so to make every block count, why not opt for trap doors instead of blocks for your walls? Now, hear me out. The idea here is actually pretty solid, because while the regular blocks fill up the space, trapdoors take up just a fraction, which makes for a roomy inside without sacrificing the exterior. And as long as no hooligans come by and flip open the trapdoors, your base should be just as safe as it was before. For those of you who like to live on the edge, I'm calling your bluff. Because while sure, putting a lava moat around your base is pretty metal, nothing's gonna top putting your house inside of a lava lake. This is next level, and sure, while you do have to worry about that pesky fireproofing, if you just use things like pressure plates, signs, warp trap doors, and the like, you're actually able to fireproof the flammable blocks. Meaning that surprisingly, we can get a pretty diverse block palette down here. And while seeing your impending doom might be scary, even if you know it's technically safe, I will say there's a certain novelty to sleeping this close to certain doom. So you're probably not building your house out of melon, but this might make you reconsider. Because strangely enough, if you use melon blocks as a texture for your walls, it'll look like a wallpaper ripped straight out of the 60s. And hey, mix in some green furniture, and this will actually start to look kinda nice, even if it is a little dated. While Minecraft doesn't have anything like zoning laws and the like, there's somewhat of an unspoken rule in an SMP that because there's so much land to build on, everyone should get their own space. But that little guideline just makes it all the more unlikely that we live underneath your friend's base. Folks, if you hide it right, then you can make sure that they'll never catch on to what you're doing. And just like that, you'll be able to get a pretty sweet piece of property without having to pay any of the rent that comes with it. Just make sure that if you do this, you can't get stingy on the way you build your hidden entrance. Take your time, find the shadows, and make sure to stay hidden. It'll definitely pay off. Hiding an entrance in your base is no easy task, because how do you balance something that's practical to use, but also keeps out the intruders? Well, if you take after this Reddit user, we might just have our answer. See, while tridents are great for launches around the skies, they can also let us enter the crawling animation without a trapdoor. And with that, we can essentially create a 1x1 entrance to a hidden room. Then, after covering the wall with some kind of custom map art, we can slide past the item frame and into your lair with ease. Now, sleeping isn't very productive, but because of phantoms and insomnia, it oftentimes feels like a chore. I mean, you do have to do it, so if we want to keep looting while you're snoozing, then what you gotta add is a cat gift farm attachment to your bed. With a simple feline setup like this, every time that you sleep, you run the chance of getting free items from the cat's morning gift. Which means, no joke, even while you're sleeping, you're still running a farm. And hey, there you go, it's even a way to get phantom membranes, so that if you don't want the insomnia that comes with not sleeping, you can still actually repair your elytra. And honestly, there's a lot worse things than getting a bedside pet friend. A dirt house is clowned on for being one of the ugliest things that you can build in Minecraft. I mean, if you need it for shelter, that's something, but it's probably not going to be something that you want to live in full time. However, with what Smallish Beans built here, it really is possible to make something prettier here. If you just use the right accent colors and actually give this a proper shape, from far away, it's hard to tell if this is dirt. It looks more like a clay or some other block that you're building out of. And the advent of mud blocks definitely shows that we can use those as well to get some pretty sweet looking designs. After you flip down a trapdoor, mobs will find a very tough time trying to chase you down there, especially if you happen to use snow layers in the area to give the base an even tighter squeeze. And to its credit, you're still able to do plenty of the regular base functions down there, whether that's crafting, mining, or even fish farming. Sure, it's not the most roomy, but considering that more space normally leads to more mobs, this could be a nice trade-off. Dripstone spikes are pretty cool, but the actual dripstone block, it's not a looker. It's a very intense, harsh texture, but there are some colors we can actually mix pretty well together. For example, if you're not a fan of the way that weathered copper actually looks, then mixing the two together, you get something that actually starts to complement. Now, is everyone gonna find this pretty? No. The comments on the original post prove as much. But is it a lot better than what we started from? Absolutely. And I think that's a good start, especially because now we can show it off to other builders like you, and I know you'll go do something special with it. Now, I know it doesn't seem the safest with all the guardians swimming about, but if you dry out the insides, then it actually becomes a fully mob-free zone. Truly, the way that it's coded in, only guardians should be able to spawn in the premises. But once we get rid of that water through sand or sponges, then it'll just be our domain. If you're willing to put in the time, then it's hard to say this work doesn't pay off. Trapdoors are a common decoration block, which lucky for us means that there's plenty of these tiny crawl spaces that we can get into. Like, take this house for example. By flipping open some of the spruce trapdoors and the pillars, we can tuck ourselves away from any passerby, even if it's their house. Or if they happen to use trapdoors in their floor design, then even better, you can hide into that too. And even if your friend doesn't have trapdoors in their base, it would look better if they did. So I'm sure if you added some of these in to help them decorate, they'd be appreciative and none the wiser that you're actually using it as a new hiding spot. When you're trying to sell the atmosphere of a build, it's the small things that'll make the biggest difference. And when we talk about that, particle effects definitely stand out against the rest. You see, say you're building a dungeon or a basement in your world, and you want to prove that it's run down. Well, add some water over top and a waterlogged stair below, and now you can prove that this place is damp and dreary. If we were to tuck this birch trapdoor into the corner, then you'll notice that the white inside of the texture makes it into a pretty great bed for your dog or your cat. And at that point, just add in an item frame with some food nearby, and I think this will make for the perfect spot for your pet pal to hang out. Not only does a lava blanket give off plenty of light to stop potential spawns, but mobs over here can't spawn in the magma anyway, nor will they want to go near it, might I add. And while I'll fully admit that this would look a lot better in the nether, over there, the lava isn't as much of a deterrent, so it's best to keep your boiling base over here in the overworld for now. Zombies are all too common of a problem for villages. I mean, with a 10% chance that every midnight in a village a zombie siege starts and wipes out the population, I'm sure most of us have seen this happen one too many times. But a place for you to turn that undead negative into a positive is by living in a zombie village. These abandoned ghost town villages only have a 2% chance of spawning in your overworld. And while it's gonna take some time to find, here having undead roommates is a feature and not so much a downside. Just make sure to keep all of them out of direct sunlight. daylight. Otherwise, you're gonna have more than one ghost town on your hands. And with all those new paintings that we have to play around with, we can take this older build hack and give it a new twist. Since I love what this user did here to use the paintings as fake interiors, I mean, come on, it's simple math. More paintings equals more interiors. And what I will know that they did here particularly well is spacing out the painting from the actual window so that there's a lot more depth when you're looking at the build. Especially when someone's looking up at the top windows from the ground floor, it blends in particularly nicely, as opposed to just being yet another flat painting that you place too close to a window. Chiseled bookshelves not only give us a new container to play around with, but also a new way to grab a redstone signal. And because they give out a different redstone signal every time that you take it from one of the different slots, if you were to take out a book and place it back into that slot, then we essentially have a 6-digit different combination lock. And then, as Angs builds it out here, once you type in any of the wrong combinations, it just closes up the door, so anyone who's not supposed to be there can't get in. And it gives us an easy way to shut it without having to type in the whole garage code again. I think both are nice. This might look like a pretty mediocre base with an even more mediocre door, but the truth is anything but, since when we open it up and step inside, we'll find that we've created this entire massive base in a completely different cyberspace. And really, when you see one of these examples with the immersive portals mod, it does not take a stretch of the imagination to picture the kind of TARDIS that you could make with this. It is pretty cool, and it makes me wish we could connect portals like this in the base game. Beds are a staple of the game, and they won't be going away anytime soon, though a little variety would be nice. So what about a sleeping bag? Well, we can pull this off by solely placing slabs around the rim of the bed, which is super easy and it doesn't require a lot of material. And while I'm not saying that this is going to work out if you place it in a castle, it might fit in for a temporary base in the mines. But for any Bedrock players, beware, because you might not be able to respawn on top of the bed like we can in Java. Having a cool base is one thing, but having a cool way to enter that base is on another level. So if you're tired of getting to your secret stash the same way as everyone else, this might make quite the entrance. Now, this might look like just a hole into the void, you'd be exactly right, but the true secret here is that we not only have one hole through Bedrock, we have two. That way we can exit through the seeming death pit and then re-enter with an elytra into our secret base. And as long as no one has X-ray to see where the actual base is, this should do a good job of keeping your goodies hidden. Shulkers are an invaluable item to have when it comes to storing your stuff. But what if they could store more than just items? Well, that's the idea behind this community-made Mega Shulker concept. Here we can store a fully fledged build inside something like a structure block and place it wherever we'd like. And hey, we can even store mobs inside like so, giving us a lot more freedom than just some measly 27 slots. So the next time you're looking to move house, why not just actually move the house instead of just the stuff inside? According to Mojang, once you've defeated the Ender Dragon, the only logical step is to turn the main end island into your base, complete by building farms, placing water fountains to deter Endermen, and even some iron golems to help out when those don't work. But while a lot of this seems pretty extra to do, I actually think that the lookout towers that they build here are pretty nice. I mean, they're better than just obsidian pillars. Everyone's got some of those. So if you're not going to transform the entire end like Sandiction, there's at least a couple of baby steps that you can take to improve your world. Villagers make for great neighbors, and plenty of people set up bases around villages. But their pillager cousins, on the other hand, not so much. That said, it's hard to look at a pillager outpost and not wonder what it's like to actually live in one of those things. I mean, after you evict all the tenants, of course. After you make it so that no illager mobs can spawn, you do get a pretty sweet watchtower to walk around in. And compared to all the other naturally generating structures in Minecraft, this definitely doesn't look the worst. So even though doing this is sure to make you a voluntary exile, there's a certain amount of joy that comes from raiding the raiders. How about actually refurbishing one of these Bastion remnants when you conquer it? By sprucing up the place with some of the new wood types that were introduced in the Nether update and really just making it look more like a home, you can make a really cool base out of one of these things. Once you get the piglin out of there, this is a great way to have a ready-made base when you head to the Nether. This composter doesn't look like much, but it's actually my base. Don't believe me? Here, I'll show you. If we just step inside and throw an item right into place, a hidden hopper minecart will trigger and cause this redstone machine to push us right into place. And bam, hidden entrance. And while it's hard to notice what's happening from above, this Reddit user's post makes the mechanics a lot more obvious. Just make sure you place this in a village where it makes sense for there to be a composter. Otherwise, this hidden base could just stick out like a sore thumb. This here by cubic meter is the ultimate storage system. And what exactly makes it ultimate, right? Just a lot of chests? Well, folks, that's barely even cutting it. Since the truth here is that this is able to store all of the items in 1.17 Minecraft. And while my sorting system usually starts to bottleneck at the speed of the hopper, this one can sort up to 6.5 million items per hour. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?